Het-Heru, Namaste, Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum. This is Het-Heru with another broadcast for you. And today I want to talk about gynocentrism and mass mind control. I think this will be an interesting topic for you. But before I get into the nitty-gritty, I was trying out some of these. Actually, I've been eating these for a while, but these pistachios are really good, and they're really good for the nervous system. So if you have a stressful job or something, just buy a bag of these suckers and just sit them at your desk and munch on them throughout the day, and you'll find yourself a little bit more relaxed. Or you can start reciting the Amen or Osir mantra, and that will also get you into a more peaceful state. My person prefers the Het-Heru mantra because that invokes a bit of joy and pleasure within you, and it's also a healing energy. So anyway, let's get to the topic at hand. Before I do that, do you ever watch those old black and white episodes of The Twilight Zone with Rod Serling? And before he starts the episode, he would he'd be like the narrator, but he actually would appear in the episode, and he would say something very clever like, "Consider, if you will, a man and a woman caught in time," And that's really an interesting thing he was doing, and not many people understood, was that he was helping you with what we call the suspension of disbelief, or suspension of disbelief, is that it's a right brain function. Here's what I mean by that, is like to enable you to accept a premise or to have you work on an answer to a particular issue or problem. You don't state it as a fact, or you don't state it as an absolute. It's more of an open-ended thing. So, and this is how Rod was introducing the episode, by not saying this happened or this will happen, but he was just saying, consider it, or what if this were to happen? And when you do things like that, it allows the right brain to start working on that. And it also takes you into a trance state. And many people don't know that that's how a lot of hypnotists work. And sometimes what they'll do is they give you I don't know if you want to call it a double negative, but it's two things. Like, for example, it's easy to be stressed and relaxed going into more meditation state. Now, when you say stressed and relaxed, it's going to immediately, it's a contradiction. So your brain starts to what's going on, trying to reconcile that. So that's an interesting thing. But anyway, and you'll see that in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, where you'll see the figures always in an action pose almost. And that's going back to what I was saying, like an open-ended question. It's an action pose because it leaves your right brain to kind of fill in the blank. This is how you really think. This is how you're supposed to think. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because what it's actually doing is actually engaging the mind, engaging you, rather than it being an absolute or just giving you a resolution to where you don't have to think. And that's the problem with the Western world today and the major universities, is because it's all about just giving you the answer, you regurgitating the answer, and then they're giving you a degree. But never in what they're teaching are they showing you how, or your mind, how to think. And the way to do that has to be through these type of open-ended presenting these open-ended questions, symbols, and what have you. So anyway, so I'm saying all that to get into this is that when we're going to talk about things like how mass mind control is done, we have to have an open mind. We can't have a fixed way of looking at the world, because when we start to do that, then we create these ideas about reality that go contrary to what we already believe. And in doing so, you're never able to break the paradigm, meaning you're never able to see beyond and understand what the possibilities could be. And this is why you have a lot of people so trapped in left brain thinking that they're always they're just so negative. They can't accept anything. When you say UFOs, like, what, crazy UFOs? You say alternate dimensions, you say new age, and they're just so negative about that because they've already fixed themselves on a certain perspective. And it's a closed loop, it's not, it's very closed. And that type of learning is not advanced learning. And that's not the type of learning that built ancient civilizations. And, and we need to go back to that. We definitely need to go back to that. In fact, years ago, I wrote books, well, not books, but I wrote papers on this about how, the open loop, how that is such an important tool in accelerated learning, So when I'm proposing these ideas to you, I want you to think about it as if, what if this were so? And that's the way you should propose it to your mind, because then your mind will work on its own to come up with its own solutions, answers, and hypothesis. So that's what you want, I'm not here to feed you answers, and nor should anybody else feed you answers. And that's what's wrong in the so-called conspiracy theory arena or community, is that all they do is talk about the problems, give the names, but they don't have solutions, how to fix things. And if they do have solutions, it's merely about voting a different person in office or removing that person and putting somebody else in office. And we know that doesn't work, because all you're doing is window dressing. Because the heart of the problem is you have to get to the root cause of it. And the root cause of it is how we think as a planet, how we think as a global community. And that is the problem. Our thinking is wrong, totally wrong. We're off. If we can fix how everyone on this planet were to think tomorrow, everything would be magically transformed into something totally different. And I mean that literally, okay? I'm not just, just saying that. Literally everything would change, because it's the belief system. Now, when you have something, when you're mentioning certain things like, misandry or gynocentrism, these are hot button words, because they're charged. They are charged with emotions. So people, when you say anti-Semitism, when you say racism or white supremacy, people are already caught up and invested in that. And here's what happens. So let me explain, because it's very important as a magician or a magi or a God man, God woman, that you understand how things work behind the scenes, that you understand what makes this reality or planet work. And I can't keep saying this. I can't say this enough. I can't keep emphasizing it enough until you really, and experience is going to really bring it home. Because me saying it means little until you actually experience it. And if you're doing the things that I've been talking about for the past 5 years, and you will experience these things, and sometimes it can be very, very unsettling. I mean, even though I know about these things, I've experienced certain things that have just literally just rocked my world and my consciousness to the point of where I didn't want to go back and experience it again, because it was just so off-putting. And there's actually a line that best describes this from The Matrix, where they talk about they don't want to. I forgot who's this. One of the guys from The Matrix said, he says, we don't take people who are at a certain age out of the Matrix, because it could really be shocking for them. And that's so true. It's so true, because you are so accustomed to this fourth dimensional experience. And to remove you from it, or to show you the reality of what's really there, could totally disrupt your thought process. And you would not be able to handle that. And some people say, yeah, sure, I could handle it. No, you can't. And I've had not many instances, but I've had instances where I have experienced that. And to myself, my person had trouble adapting and comprehending and dealing with that, because it wasn't easy. So anyway, the way we have to understand is that our reality is a construct, and it's an implied agreement, an implied agreement, meaning that we all agree to have this experience collectively together, and this is what we constitute. This is what constitutes what we call reality. Okay, now this reality is constantly changing. Okay, because what exists only is the now moment, and the past is contingent upon the now moment, not the reverse. We don't have a past and then comes the present. It doesn't work that way. It's the present then the past. Weird, huh? So, say for example, if I give you a definition of gynocentrism, and I say, there's, no, let's start from the very beginning, and I'll say this, and I'll say women have been mistreated throughout history, throughout history. So we need something like feminism. Now I'm going to use these terms, and I'm not for or against any of these terms. I just need to, I want you to understand where I'm going with this. So if I say that women have been oppressed throughout history, so we need something like feminism, right? Now, the reality is that's not true. We know that if we go back in history, that women in many, many cases had more rights in some cases than men, and ruled in some instances, in some nations, more than men did. And there were societies that were kind of what we could totally classify as a matriarchy, all right? So, and you can, what testifies to this is that you can go back, and some of the first gods were goddesses, all right? But anyway, so if I tell you this about, women were always oppressed, and they never had any rights, they were, when I give you a term like feminism, and I introduce that to the masses of the population, and then I emotionally charge that, meaning I get you to have an emotional attachment to it that's really, really strong. When that reaches a certain tipping point of the society, when a number of people start to really believe in that definition, believe in that cause, and campaign for that, that literally starts to change the fourth dimensional experience that you have before your eyes. Things start to change. And one of the first things that starts to change is history. You start to, history starts to change to conform to the new belief system, the new term and the definition of that term. So then what you will find is cases where women were oppressed throughout history. Are you following me? Now, just, like Rod Serling, what if, okay? Now, along comes something else, and we say, gynocentrism, that, it's everything's been focused on women and things of that nature. And if I give you that term, and then I have you respond to that definition, and then you become passionate about that, and then again, then you'll start to believe that everything has been catered toward women, and that the world is unfair to men. It's there's a lot of misandry practices and things of that nature. Then what will slowly happen, and sometimes beyond your perception, and many times within your perception, is that history, things will change. I mean, physically change to adapt to your belief system, because the masses of the people, when they come to a collective agreement, that causes, it's the MCA, the Mass Collective Agreement, that causes a reshaping of reality, because reality constantly changes. It changes with the observer. So the only way it can change is through an idea powered with a strong emotion, okay, and the expectation of what should happen. Now, the ruling elite knows this, okay, so this is what they do. They want to create conflict. So what they will do, and they do it through a number of different things, they will create a gender war, and they'll create these names and definitions that so that part of the population will subscribe to this belief system and create this reality. Another part of the population will subscribe to this belief system and create another reality, which the two realities conflict with each other, and there you go. All right. So and both sides will authentically feel that they're right and be passionate about it, which is why I talk about being very careful and watch the belief systems that you accept, because you create that reality. And most of the belief systems the beliefs that you have are not yours. They were created outside of you. Now, the reality that we're experiencing today is not a reality that you created, but you are creating it. It is a reality that was given to you to create by the very same people, the small percentage of the ruling elite, the cabal, the Illuminati, whoever you want to call it. They're the ones that are feeding ideas and definitions, so that you are getting wrapped up in them, passionate about them, and then manifesting that reality. All right. So that's just something I wanted to explain to you, how this is working in our modern day society. And many people are experiencing strange things. Many people are saying, things are changing. and we're calling it the Mandela Effect. People are having different memories of different things. So, you know, you can call it Mandela Effect, call it whatever you want. But the reality is that you are shifting to an alternate parallel universe where you are experiencing something else based upon your based upon the belief system that you have accepted. You know, and you know, you've heard me say in other broadcasts before, I said that there is another alternate reality where Hillary Clinton won the election, and those people who would strongly believe that she should be president have shifted to that realm to where she is their president. You know, so think about that. The main thing you have to keep in mind is that it's energetic. Reality is dynamic. It is constantly changing. There is some of us who do not perceive it at all. We cannot sense the change. And that there's others who are very perceptive and they have their third eye open who can perceive these changes and see the difference. But society is looking at them and calling them crazy, but they are noticing that there are discrepancies in things, you know? And, you know, I had a friend call me not too long ago, and he talked about the discrepancies that he was witnessing himself. And I myself can see it. So these are real, and these are things that are happening because this is how life works. This is how reality is. It is not an objective reality, but it's a subjective experience that we're going through based upon the ideas that the observer has. All right. So think about that. Now, you know, the idea here too is that we are in a very difficult situation right now because we're being asked to believe certain things to create this gender war for the specific purpose of creating a type of future that they want. So in other words, they've already outlined what the world will look 10, 20 years from now. They know what it will look like because they scan timelines. So with that in mind, all they have to do is start impregnating the culture with these names and definitions and watch how it spreads. And then the next level is to create the emotional attachment to these things. And as soon as the emotional attachment is there, the expectation comes that you will, you know, this is how some people, you know, the expectation is that, you know, you're a victim, so you're owed something. You're a victim. You're owed something. So when that happens, then the masses, you know, start to create and shape a new reality. And that's exactly what the Kabbalah wants. They want that new reality formed and shaped, and the people to shift into that reality. And that's exactly what we have to make sure that we don't do. See, we think that it's all, you know, when we say social engineering, we really think it's all done on a very concrete physical level, but we're not looking at the occult metaphysical implications of all of this. And that's how it really works. You know, it starts out, you know, in these secret think tank institutions, then it comes out, it's proliferated and comes out, and then it goes into the universities and it's taught by these university professors, and then it goes to the major media institutions, and then it seeps in and becomes a part of what we call as mainstream culture. And, you know, so, and then once that starts to happen, it's you know, and it becomes a virus and it spreads even further. But they know, and there's, you know, I don't have time to go into it, but there are many different ways that they can craft this and shape this to make sure it can be a very deadly thing, or, you know, something very subtle and not too harmful, you know. So, but what they're doing now is they're creating, they want these individuals who are participating in these definitions and terms to be advocates for them and to be really, really passionate to the point of where they would almost die for it, you know, and that's very dangerous. And we have to be very careful about that because they're channeling a lot of energy into some erroneous definition in terms and creating that type of reality, well, that type of reality. So the thing is, we have to make sure that it doesn't get to that point of where it reaches enough people to where they form this collective agreement and create this reality. Do you understand what I mean? Because that's the safety mechanism. Because one person cannot shape the reality of the planet, but collectively we can, and they know that. which is why they keep us in this reality tunnel, this hypnotic state that we're in. And this is what I was telling you about before, prior, that if all of us you see around you is merely just a projection of a belief system based on the collective agreement of the population. But if the population decided to change their belief system overnight, you would see a radical physical change in everything around us. Because once the belief changes, everything around us changes. That's just how it has to be. And that would be miraculous. And that's really what the goal is about, is to take us out of this left brain linear thinking and have us work on integrated whole brain thinking, and so that we can bring the planet back into balance. So they want to keep male and female fighting, but we want to have the balance of the yin and yang, or the solar and the moon cults, have a balance of that, as we did in ancient times. So anyway, I just want you to understand that we can't fall for these terms and labels and then respond passionately to them, because when you start doing that, then you start creating a false reality, and then that's like this wormhole that you get sucked into. So that's my broadcast. And if you like the video, hit like. And if you are watching this for the first time, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family members. Until my next broadcast, this is Het-Heru, and Amen Ra.